October 25, 1944, 6:47 a.m., 70 miles off the coast of Samar, Philippines. Commander Ernest Evans stands on the bridge of USS Johnston, watching the horizon turn crimson. The water is glass smooth, too smooth. His coffee has gone cold in his hand, but he doesn't notice. Something feels wrong. The radio operator's voice cracks through the silence. 3 words that stop every heartbeat on the bridge. Pagodas, bearing north. Pagodas, the nickname American sailors use for the distinctive tower-like superstructures of Japanese battleships, the biggest, most powerful warships ever built. And they're here, now, charging straight toward the most vulnerable ships in the entire U.S. Navy. Behind Evans, 6 escort carriers waddle through the calm sea. USS Gambier Bay, Fanshawe Bay, St. Lo. The sailors call them baby flat tops, or jeep carriers, built on merchant ship hulls with flight decks welded on top. They're slow, 17 knots maximum. Their armor is so thin you can punch through it with a heavy machine gun. One officer famously called them 2-block-long matchboxes wrapped in tinfoil. The Japanese have 4 battleships, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 11 destroyers. Admiral Takeo Kurita's Center Force, the most powerful surface action group Japan has sent to sea since Midway. They were supposed to be at the bottom of the ocean. American submarines reported sinking them days ago. But here they are, materializing out of the dawn like vengeful ghosts. And between this armada and the escort carriers, 3 destroyers, 4 destroyer escorts. That's it. That's all Admiral Clifton Sprague has to defend his Taffy 3 task unit. 7 small warships against the pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy. On the bridge of battleship Yamato, Japanese lookouts peer through binoculars at the American ships. Someone laughs. Another points. These aren't the fast carriers they expected. The Enterprise, the Lexington, the heavy metal of America's Pacific Striking Force. These are the convoy guards, the expendables. Ships so cheap the U.S. builds them in commercial shipyards and launches one every few weeks. One Japanese officer will later write in his diary, "We thought it would be like hunting rabbits." Admiral Sprague's hands shake as he reaches for the radio. His voice is steady though. Decades of naval training won't let it crack. Not yet. He orders the escort carriers to run south, to generate smoke, to launch every aircraft they have, even the ones armed with depth charges meant for submarines, useless against battleships. Then he does something that makes no tactical sense whatsoever. He orders his destroyers to attack. 3 destroyers against 4 battleships, the largest battleships ever constructed, with 18.1-inch guns that can throw a shell weighing as much as a car over 25 miles. Yamato alone displaces 72,000 tons. USS Johnston displaces 2,700 tons. It's not a fair fight. It's not even close to a fair fight. Commander Evans doesn't hesitate. He's already turning Johnston toward the enemy fleet, black smoke pouring from her stacks as the boilers strain to maximum power. His executive officer stares at him. The logical move is to lay smoke and run. Buy time. Escort carriers can't survive a surface engagement. Everyone knows that. Evans looks at his crew. Half of them are teenagers, kids from Oklahoma and Michigan and California who've never seen combat until 6 months ago. He thinks about those escort carriers, about the pilots sleeping in ready rooms, about the cooks preparing breakfast, about the damage control parties who don't even have proper armor to protect their ships. He thinks about what happens if those Japanese battleships get within gun range. Then he keys the ship's intercom. His voice echoes through every compartment, every passageway, every gun mount on USS Johnston. "All hands, this is the captain speaking. A large Japanese fleet has been contacted. They are 15 miles away and headed in our direction. They are believed to have 4 battleships, 8 cruisers, and a number of destroyers." He pauses. You can hear the ventilation fans humming in the silence. This will be a fight against overwhelming odds from which survival cannot be expected. "We will do what damage we can." The intercom clicks off. Behind him, 7 escort carriers run for their lives. Ahead of him, the pagodas grow larger on the horizon. Johnston's bow cuts through the water at 35 knots, throwing spray across the forward gun mounts. The crew doesn't mutiny. doesn't abandon stations. They load their guns and wait. Because sometimes in war, you don't fight to win. You fight because someone has to. 6:50 a.m., 12 miles in closing. The Japanese shells arrive first. You can see them coming. Massive projectiles the size of telephone poles arcing through the morning sky, tumbling end over end. They make a sound like freight trains tearing through sheet metal. The first salvo falls 200 yards short of Johnston, throwing up geysers of seawater that drench the forward deck. The second salvo straddles the ship. The third will find its mark. Commander Evans doesn't flinch. He's calculating. Johnston has 10 torpedoes, 5-inch guns that can barely scratch a battleship's armor, and one advantage the Japanese don't expect. He's already committed to dying. That makes him unpredictable, dangerous. All ahead flank, he orders. Come right to 090. Prepare to fire torpedoes. The helmsman's knuckles are white on the wheel. They're not running away. They're running toward. Behind Johnston, destroyers Hoel and Heermann turn to follow. Commander Leon Kentberger on Hoel watches through his binoculars as Evans's ship accelerates into gun range. He knows what Evans is doing, drawing fire, making himself the target, buying seconds that might become minutes that might save those carriers. Kentberger keys his own intercom. We're going in with Johnston. Good luck. The Japanese cruiser Kumano spots the charging destroyers and opens fire. Her 8-inch guns flash orange in the gray dawn. More shells howl overhead. One hits the water so close to Johnston that the concussion throws sailors off their feet. Metal fragments pepper the superstructure. A signalman clutches his arm where shrapnel has torn through his sleeve. Nobody stops working. On the escort carrier, Fanshawe Bay, Admiral Sprague watches the destroyers charge through his binoculars. His hands won't stop shaking now. In 29 years of naval service, he's never seen anything like this. These aren't covering actions. These aren't tactical withdrawals. These are 3 tin cans committing suicide by battleship. Sir, his communications officer says quietly. Should we? Launch everything, Sprague cuts him off. Bombers, fighters, torpedo planes. I don't care if they're armed with spitballs. Get them in the air. The flight decks erupt with activity. Pilots sprint to their aircraft still wearing pajamas under their flight suits. Ordnance crews load whatever ammunition they can grab. Anti-submarine depth charges, practice bombs, fragmentation clusters meant for ground troops. One pilot will later take off with nothing but his .38 pistol, planning to fly strafing runs and throw the gun at the Japanese if he runs out of bullets. 6:53 a.m., 8 miles. Johnston enters torpedo range. Evans waits. The ship shudders as a 14-inch shell from battleship Congo punches through the aft deckhouse and explodes inside the crew quarters. 13 men die instantly. Fire breaks out in 3 compartments. The damage control parties are already running toward the flames before the smoke clears. Fire torpedoes, Evans says. 10 Mark 15 torpedoes leap from their tubes and hit the water running. White wakes streak across the ocean surface at 46 knots, spreading in a fan pattern toward the Japanese battle line. Evans counts in his head. 45 seconds to target. Maybe 50. The Japanese see them coming. Kumano tries to turn, her massive bulk sluggish in the calm water. She's too slow, too close. The first torpedo hits her bow. The second hits amidships. 2 columns of water and steel erupt from her hull. The heavy cruiser shudders, slows, begins listing to port. She's not sinking yet, but she's out of the fight, forced to withdraw with her bow torn open and seawater flooding her forward compartments. On Johnston's bridge, a spontaneous cheer erupts. They hit her. A destroyer just crippled a heavy cruiser. Evans doesn't cheer. He's already ordering the next course change, zigging and zagging through the shell splashes, making his ship as hard to hit as possible, because now every Japanese gun that can reach them is firing. The ocean around Johnston has become a forest of geysers, near misses and straddles that throw thousands of tons of seawater skyward. Hoel follows Johnston into the maelstrom. Heermann angles toward another cruiser. The destroyer escorts, smaller, lighter, armed with only 3-inch guns, form up behind them. USS Samuel B. Roberts, nicknamed Sammy B. USS Dennis, USS John C. Butler, USS Raymond. Ships designed to hunt submarines are charging battleships. 7:01 a.m., 5 miles. A Japanese shell finally connects with Johnston. The 14-inch projectile hits the bridge superstructure and detonates. The blast kills 3 officers instantly and tears Commander Evans's shirt off his body. Shrapnel rips into his left hand, mangling 2 fingers. Burns cover his chest and face. Blood pours down his arm. He wipes it out of his eyes and keeps giving orders. The ship's steering is damaged. They switch to manual control. Sailors in the bowels of the ship hand-cranking the rudder. The fire control radar is destroyed. The gun directors start aiming by eye, like Nelson at Trafalgar. Another hit, then another. Johnston is bleeding from a dozen wounds now, trailing oil and smoke. Her speed drops to 28 knots, 25, 20, but she's still shooting. Her 5-inch guns hammer away at the Japanese cruiser. Haguro, shells bouncing off the cruiser's armor belt like pebbles off a tank. It shouldn't work. It can't work. Then one lucky shell penetrates Haguro's superstructure and explodes inside her fire control station. The cruiser's guns fall silent, her directors destroyed. She turns away, smoke pouring from her upper decks. 2 Japanese heavy cruisers damaged or driven off by one destroyer that shouldn't have survived the first 5 minutes. Admiral Kurita, aboard Yamato, stares through his binoculars at the chaos unfolding before him. This isn't what intelligence promised. These aren't supposed to be fleet carriers. They're too slow, too small. The destroyers aren't supposed to attack. They're supposed to run. Nothing about this engagement makes sense. His ships are scattered across 10 miles of ocean, maneuvering independently, each captain trying to avoid the suicidal destroyer attacks and the swarm of aircraft now diving through the anti-aircraft fire. Kurita's radio crackles with damage reports. Confusion. Requests for orders. He doesn't know it yet, but his fleet has already lost the initiative, lost the element of surprise, lost precious minutes while the American escort carriers run south at maximum speed, opening the range degree by degree, and those minutes are measured in American blood. 7:15 a.m. 3 miles. USS Hoel is dying. Commander Kentberger grips the railing as another salvo from battleship Congo straddles his ship. The destroyer has taken 40 hits. 40. Her decks are shredded metal. Her engine room is flooding. Half her guns are silent, their crews dead or wounded. But the guns that still work keep firing. A 16-inch shell from Congo hits Hoel directly amidships. The explosion is so massive, it lifts the entire center of the ship out of the water. The destroyer breaks in half. Not slowly, not gradually. One moment she's a warship. The next moment she's 2 pieces of twisted steel, bow and stern rising toward the sky as the center section disappears beneath the waves. Kentberger is thrown into the ocean. He surfaces, gasping, surrounded by burning oil and screaming men. He watches his ship's bow slip beneath the surface, the American flag still flying from the mast until the very last second. 253 of his crew go down with her. But Hoel bought 7 minutes. 7 minutes that Admiral Sprague's carriers used to run. 7 minutes of Japanese shells aimed at a destroyer instead of the unarmored escort carriers. USS Samuel B. Roberts sees Hoel go down. Lieutenant Commander Robert Copeland, her captain, doesn't slow. His destroyer escort is even smaller than Johnston, 1,350 tons. A toy boat compared to the Japanese battleships. Her crew calls her the destroyer escort that fought like a battleship. They're about to prove it. "Gun crews," Copeland orders over the intercom, "commence rapid fire. I want every gun on this ship shooting until we run out of targets or run out of ammunition." The 5-inch guns on Samuel B. Roberts begin firing so fast the barrels glow red. 3 rounds per minute becomes 4, then 5. The crew is loading and firing faster than the weapons were designed to operate. Shells slam into the Japanese cruiser. Chokai, at point-blank range. Most bounce off. Some penetrate. One lucky shot hits Chokai's torpedo storage. The cruiser explodes from the inside. Crewmen on Samuel B. Roberts cheer. Then a Japanese battleship finds them. The first shell destroys the aft gun mount, killing all 13 men serving it instantly. The second shell penetrates the engine room. Superheated steam erupts through the compartments below deck, scalding men alive. The chief engineer dies at his post, hands still on the throttle, trying to maintain pressure as the water rushes in. Samuel B. Roberts lists hard to port. She's sinking. Everyone aboard knows it. They keep shooting anyway. The forward gun crew loads their last shells. Fires, loads, fires. The breach is so hot it's burning their hands through their gloves. They don't stop. Not until a 14-inch shell obliterates the entire forward section of the ship, silencing the gun forever. 7:27 a.m. On Johnston, Commander Evans collapses against the bulkhead. Blood loss, shock, exhaustion. His executive officer catches him, props him up. Evans pushes him away and forces himself upright. The ship is barely making 15 knots now. The engine room reports catastrophic damage. They're taking water faster than the pumps can handle. "Sir," the executive officer says quietly, "we should give the order to abandon." "Not yet," Evans cuts him off. "Not while she's still shooting." And Johnston is still shooting. One functioning 5-inch gun, manned by a crew of teenagers who refuse to leave their post. They're firing at battleship Yamato herself now, the biggest warship ever built. Their shells are mosquito bites, annoying, ineffective, but they make Yamato turn away. The Japanese admiral aboard her, Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki, watches this insane destroyer refuse to die. She's on fire. She's listing. Her deck is torn open in a dozen places. And she's still charging, still shooting, her lone remaining gun flashing defiance through the smoke. "What kind of men crew these ships?" he mutters. His gunnery officer has the answer: Americans. Yamato's massive 18.1-inch guns, weapons that can destroy a cruiser with a single hit, shift aim to finish Johnston. At this range, they cannot miss. The salvo arrives like the hand of God. 3 shells, each weighing 200 pounds. One hits Johnston's bow. One hits amidships. One hits the stern. The explosions are so violent they lift the entire destroyer out of the water and slam her back down. When the smoke clears, Johnston is barely recognizable as a ship. Her superstructure is gone. Her mast has collapsed. Fire consumes everything that isn't already underwater. Evans gives the order he's been avoiding for 90 minutes. Abandon ship, all hands, abandon ship. Men pour over the side into the oil-slicked water. Many are wounded. Some can't swim. They help each other, forming human chains, keeping the injured afloat. A Japanese destroyer passes close enough that the Americans think they're about to be machine-gunned in the water, a war crime that has happened before in this ocean. Instead, the Japanese captain appears on his bridge wing. He salutes. His crew stands at attention. They're saluting the men who crewed Johnston, honoring their courage. Then the destroyer moves on, heading south toward the fleeing carriers. Johnston rolls to port. Water rushes through her shattered hull. Commander Ernest Evans is seen briefly on the tilting deck, blood-soaked and burned, watching his crew swim away. He makes no attempt to save himself. He goes down with his ship. The water closes over Johnston's bow at 9:45 a.m. She fought for 3 hours. A destroyer designed for convoy escort duty stood toe-to-toe with battleships and cruisers and traded blows until she had nothing left to give. 186 of her crew die with her. 141 survive. But by the time she sinks, something impossible has happened. The Japanese fleet, the most powerful surface action group in the Pacific, is in disarray. Cruisers damaged, formations scattered. Admiral Kurita has lost track of his own ships. Radio reports flood in, ships hit, ships turning away, ships requesting permission to withdraw. And the American carriers are still running, still launching aircraft, still alive. On the bridge of Escort carrier, Fanshawe Bay, Admiral Sprague receives a damage report. 1 carrier hit. Gambier Bay is slowing, listing, taking water. She won't make it, but the others might. Because 3 destroyers and 4 destroyer escorts bought them time measured in blood and burning steel. Sprague removes his cap. His hands have stopped shaking. He's crying now, watching the black smoke from Johnston and Hoel and Samuel B. Roberts stain the horizon. "I didn't think they could do it," he whispers. His chief of staff doesn't respond. There's nothing to say. They all watched the impossible happen. Small ships, outgunned, outweighed, outmatched in every measurable way, fighting like they had nothing to lose because they had everything to save. 7:35 a.m., 8,000 feet above the carnage. Lieutenant Paul Garrison circles his Wildcat fighter over the smoke-shrouded ocean and stares at what shouldn't be possible. Below him, Japanese battleships are running, not maneuvering tactically, running, twisting through violent turns, throwing up walls of anti-aircraft fire, desperately trying to avoid the swarm of American aircraft diving through the flak like angry hornets. His fuel gauge reads nearly empty. His guns have 60 rounds remaining, enough for one more strafing run. Maybe two if he's careful. He's not planning to be careful. Garrison pushes the stick forward and dives toward the cruiser, Tone. His Wildcat accelerates past 300 knots. His Wildcat. The anti-aircraft tracers arc up toward him, red and green streams of fire that look almost beautiful until you remember each one can tear your aircraft apart. He ignores them, lines up the cruiser's bridge in his gun sight, fires, 60 rounds, 5 seconds of firing time. His bullets rake Tone's superstructure, sparking off armor, shattering glass, killing the men trying to kill him. Then his guns go silent, empty. Garrison doesn't pull up. He keeps diving, dropping lower until he's 50 feet above Tone's deck. Japanese sailors duck and scatter as the Wildcat screams overhead so close they can see the pilot's face. He's smiling, because they flinched. A fighter with no ammunition just made a Japanese cruiser flinch. He pulls up into a climb, his engine coughing as it burns the last drops of fuel. Behind him, 2 more Wildcats make their own runs. One is firing his .38 service pistol out the cockpit window. It's absurd. It's desperate. It's working. The Japanese don't know these planes are harmless. Don't know half of them are armed with depth charges that can't penetrate a battleship's armor. Don't know some pilots are dropping practice bombs filled with concrete because that's all the ordnance crews had time to load. All they know is the sky is full of American aircraft, and those aircraft keep attacking, keep diving through the flak, keep coming back even after their guns fall silent. Lieutenant Commander Edward Huxtable leads a squadron of Avenger torpedo bombers toward Battleship Congo. His plane is loaded with a Mark 13 torpedo, designed for submarines, not battleships, but it's what he has. His squadron has 6 aircraft. They need to get within 1,000 yards to have any chance of hitting. Congo's anti-aircraft batteries open up at 3 miles. The sky becomes solid metal. Tracers and shell bursts fill the air so thickly it looks like you could walk on them. An Avenger to Huxtable's left explodes, direct hit. The plane disintegrates into burning fragments. No parachute. He keeps flying. 500 yards. The torpedo bomber shudders as shrapnel tears through the wings. Warning lights flash across the instrument panel. His radio operator is calling out damage reports, but Huxtable can't hear him over the roar of the engine and the crash of anti-aircraft shells. 300 yards. He can see individual sailors on Congo's deck, see the muzzle flashes from their guns, see the rising sun painted on her bow. He releases the torpedo and pulls up hard. The Avenger groans, metal screaming, climbing away from the battleship's secondary batteries. Behind him, the torpedo runs true. Hits Congo, below the waterline. The explosion is massive but not fatal. Battleships are built to take torpedo hits, but the damage slows her, makes her cautious, takes her out of the vanguard of the pursuit. 3 more Avengers follow Huxtable in. 2 are shot down. The third gets his torpedo away before a 5-inch shell tears his tail off. The plane spins into the ocean. The pilot and his 2 crewmen are killed on impact, but their torpedo hits cruiser Suzuya. She slows, turns away. Another Japanese ship forced to withdraw. On escort carrier Kalinin Bay, the flight deck crew is working miracles. They're launching planes faster than the manual says is possible. Pilots taxi into position while the previous aircraft is still clearing the deck. Some planes take off with ordnance crews still hanging off the wings, jumping clear at the last second. One pilot, Ensign Hans Jensen, climbs into his Wildcat and discovers his guns aren't loaded. No time to fix it, he takes off anyway, flies toward the Japanese fleet, makes dry runs on a destroyer, diving and pulling up without firing, forcing the destroyer to maneuver, to zigzag, to waste time evading an unarmed fighter. He makes 11 runs before his fuel runs out, ditches in the ocean, gets picked up by a destroyer escort 6 hours later, sunburned and laughing. "Did I help?" he asks the rescue crew. They don't have the heart to tell him his unarmed fighter probably saved a carrier. 8:10 a.m. Admiral Kurita stands on Yamato's bridge and tries to make sense of the chaos. His battle plan, a simple, devastating strike against the American carrier fleet, has dissolved into madness. His ships are scattered across 15 miles of ocean. 2 cruisers are damaged and withdrawing. The formation that was supposed to steamroll the American carriers has been shattered by destroyers and aircraft that shouldn't have been able to stop them. His chief of staff approaches cautiously. "Admiral, we have reports of additional American carrier groups approaching from the north." Kurita turns. "Confirmed?" "Not confirmed, sir, but the volume of aircraft suggests at least 3 fleet carriers, possibly more." It's a lie. There are no fleet carriers within 200 miles. The aircraft swarming Kurita's fleet are coming from 6 escort carriers, the same carriers he's been chasing for 90 minutes. But Kurita doesn't know that. Can't know that, because Admiral Sprague's carriers have been launching and recovering aircraft continuously, creating the illusion of an endless supply of planes. Some pilots make 5 sorties, 6, 7, landing, refueling, rearming with whatever ammunition is available, and launching again. They're exhausted, running on adrenaline and rage, but they keep flying. Kurita looks at the plot table. His fleet has traveled 30 miles south, chasing carriers that are still out of gun range. He's lost track of time, lost situational awareness. The American aircraft are still attacking, still coming. And his mission, the reason he's here, the reason he brought Japan's last major surface fleet into these waters, is to reach Leyte Gulf, to destroy the American invasion fleet, to change the course of the war. But Leyte Gulf is to the south, and he's been chasing carriers to the east, away from his objective, for 2 hours. "Signal all ships," Kurita says quietly. "Break off pursuit. Reform battle line. Prepare to proceed to Leyte Gulf." His chief of staff stares at him. "Sir, the carriers are escaping," Kurita finishes, "and we are out of position. We've wasted enough time." The orders go out. The Japanese fleet begins to turn away, disengaging, retreating. On Fanshawe Bay, Admiral Sprague watches through his binoculars as the pagoda masts on the horizon begin to turn. He doesn't believe it at first, doesn't trust his eyes. The Japanese fleet has every advantage. They can still catch his carriers. They can still win, but they're turning away. "They're leaving," his communications officer whispers. Sprague lowers his binoculars. His legs suddenly won't hold him. He sits down heavily in his chair, the exhaustion of 2 hours of terror finally catching up. Around him, his staff officers are silent. Some are crying. Some are staring at the smoke-stained horizon where destroyers burned and died. "Get me casualty reports," Sprague manages. "And someone needs to account for Johnston, and Hoel, and..." He can't finish. Can't say their names without his voice breaking. His chief of staff puts a hand on his shoulder. "They bought us time, sir. They bought us everything." Behind them, escort carrier Gambier Bay is sinking. Her engines flooded. Her crew abandoning ship. She'll be the only American carrier sunk by surface gunfire in the entire war. But the others are safe. 5 carriers, thousands of men. The invasion fleet at Leyte Gulf, unaware how close they came to annihilation. All because some destroyers and destroyer escorts decided battleships weren't that scary after all. October 25, 1944. Late afternoon. The sea off Samar is finally quiet. Oil slicks shimmer on the swells like black glass. Bits of shattered wood, torn life jackets, and twisted metal drift in slow circles. Here and there, small clusters of men cling to floater nets or overturned rafts, their faces burned, eyes bloodshot from salt water and smoke. The thunder of guns has faded into the low hiss of waves against debris. You can almost hear the ringing in their ears. Survivors of Johnston, Hoel, Samuel B. Roberts, and Gambier Bay tread water under a brutal tropical sun, lips cracked, skin blistered. Some have been in the water for hours already. Sharks circle in lazy, patient patterns just beyond kicking distance. Every splash, every movement feels like it might call them closer. A sailor from Sammy B stares at the horizon, eyes unfocused. His ship went down guns blazing, firing until the very last shell, until the magazine ran dry and the sea claimed her. Now the only trace she ever existed is the oil clinging to his hair and the memory burning in his mind. "Did we stop them?" he croaks to no one in particular. No one answers. No one knows. Far to the south, beyond their sight, lies Leyte Gulf, crowded with American transports, supply ships, and landing craft. An entire army is ashore, relying on the thin steel line of Taffy 3 and its sister groups to keep the Japanese from falling upon them like a hammer. Those soldiers will never fully understand how close ruin came that morning, how thin the margin really was. On one drifting raft, a radio man from Johnston holds a piece of scorched metal in his hands. It used to be part of a bulkhead. Now it's just a bent, blackened shard. He runs his thumb along the jagged edge and thinks about his captain, Ernest Evans, the man who turned his tin can directly into the face of battleships and never looked back. "He said we wouldn't survive," the radio man whispers, voice shaking. "But we were gonna hurt them." They did. And more than that, they confused them, scattered them, made an entire fleet doubt itself. Rescue will not come quickly. For many, it will take the better part of 2 days before American ships and aircraft finally comb these waters and begin pulling survivors from the oil and salt and grief. Some men will die of exposure, some to sharks. Some will simply stop moving, their strength spent in a fight they never should have had to win. Those who live will carry Samar with them for the rest of their lives. Months later, in quiet offices far from the front, the battle gets a name: the action off Samar, part of the larger Battle of Leyte Gulf. Reports are compiled, charts are drawn, diagrams show neat little arrows where chaos once reigned. The paper makes it look organized, predictable, almost clean. But the men who were there remember something very different. They remember the scream of shells overhead, so big you could see them falling. They remember the way a 5-inch gun's recoil rattled your bones. They remember watching destroyers disappear into walls of water and fire and then somehow emerge again, still firing, like ghosts refusing to stay dead. In Tokyo, the Japanese Navy studies the battle as well. On paper, Kurita's center force still looks formidable. He withdrew with most of his battleships and many of his cruisers intact. Technically, by tonnage sunk, Japan did well that morning. But something important broke off Samar. Not steel, not hull plating, something deeper: confidence. The Imperial Japanese Navy had finally gotten the surface battle it always wanted: big guns against small American ships at short range, no overwhelming U.S. battle line in the way. And still, incredibly, they turned back. They faced a handful of escort carriers and their paper escorts, and lost their nerve. In Washington and Pearl Harbor, analysts shake their heads over the after-action reports. It should not have worked. Escort carriers were never meant to stand against heavy surface units. Destroyer escorts were built to guard convoys, not charge battleships. On the drawing board, everything about this engagement is wrong. Yet history does not record what should have happened. It records what did. In 1945, Commander Ernest Evans is posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, the first Native American in the U.S. Navy to receive it. The citation speaks of conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity, but those are just words trying to capture a man who turned his ship into a spear and threw it at giants. Hoel's crew, Samuel B. Roberts' crew, Gambier Bay's crew, all are cited for extraordinary heroism. More medals will follow: Navy Crosses, Silver Stars, Distinguished Service Medals, pinned to uniforms on quiet parade grounds far from the smell of burning fuel. But for many of the men who survived, the real honor is simpler. They know what they did when everything pointed toward running. They know what it felt like to aim a 5-inch gun at a battleship and fire anyway. They know that when the moment came, they did not look away. Years after the war, an aging Japanese officer who fought at Samar is interviewed about the battle. He is asked what he remembers most. Not the confusion, not the damaged cruisers, not even the decision to turn away. He leans back, closes his eyes, and sees once again a tiny American destroyer charging through shell splashes, smoke pouring from her hull, a single gun still firing in stubborn defiance. "We laughed at those little carriers," he says quietly. "We thought their escorts were nothing, just paper ships." He opens his eyes. "We were wrong." Because off Samar, on a bright October morning, a handful of paper escort carriers and their tin-can guardians did something that does not make sense on any staff officer's chart. They faced a fleet that should have erased them and forced it to back down.